Hello and welcome back to this lecture on the psychological climax in Premchand's The Shroud. This session is a continuation of the previous one, and towards the close of the previous session we were talking about the relationship between the two men, the central characters, and Budhia, and how this analysis of the relationship shows the philosophy of life adopted by Madhav and Ghisu in their village. So we are going to analyze the relationship closely to see why they act in the way they act in the story. And this is the narrator's perspective on the presence of the woman in the household of Ghisu and Madhav. After the woman had come, she had laid the foundations for some kind of discipline in the household and managed to fill those shameless stomachs. And since she had arrived, the two had become even more inclined to relax and had even started acting pricey. Today that woman was dying in childbirth, and it was quite likely the pair was waiting for her to die so that they could get a good night's sleep. So the narrator neatly sums up the attitude of the two men towards the woman who had come to them, and she kind of lays the foundation for a home. The words are very, very interesting. Laid the foundation for some kind of discipline, and she seems to create the domestic setup from scratch for them, and she also managed to feed them regularly, and which is why the word shameless stomachs is pretty interesting. They shamelessly exploit the woman who has come to them, and without giving anything in return. And the narrator says that ever since she had come to their family, they had started to act in a very, very superior fashion. In fact, they asked for double wages if somebody asked them to come and work. So the presence of the woman is very interesting, as it creates a domestic structure for the two men, and the creation of domesticity itself seems to grant these two men some kind of superior status in society, and the narrator mocks that attitude. He says that they started to act pricey, and despite getting a lot of benefit through Budhia, despite getting a home and despite getting regular food because she is working for them, despite all this, they do not pay back Budhia when she is in a very, very critical situation. And the narrator says that it was quite likely the pair was waiting for her to die soon so that they can go back to sleep. So the narrator is very, very judgmental, and in fact quite rightly so, because that's what actually they really want in terms of Budhia's condition. If you recall the previous session, Madhav says why doesn't she die quickly so that she can put an end to her suffering. But the subtext to that wish is that he wants her to die because they can go back to eating the potatoes that they are roasting outside the hut, and then they can go to sleep. So we have two human beings who don't want anybody to intervene to disrupt their lifestyle, even though that particular woman who is disrupting their lifestyle is a woman who has looked after them for a long time. So we have the idea of domesticity, and we have the idea of ingratitude that is revealed through the domestic setup of Ghisu and Madhav. So through that domestic setup, the narrator shows how ungrateful Ghisu and Madhav are. So that ingratitude is callous, it's very, very harsh, it's supremely harsh, especially in relation to that particular moment in Budhia's life. And even in relationship with the rest of the society, Ghisu and Madhav become more careless and more indifferent once their domestic setups becomes more disciplined through the presence of Budhia. So, the point that I am trying to make here, that through a particular setup, the attitude of the two men become clear. The greater their comfort, the more indifferent that they become towards the society to which they need to contribute to become productive, responsible citizens in a village. So, we need to recall that particular scene where the two men are outside the hut and Budhia is inside suffering, and the men, they are roasting potatoes on a fire that they have lit, and then they have to go check in because Budhia is shrieking in pain, but then nobody is willing to go inside the hut to check because they are worried that the other person will get a larger share of the potatoes. So, this is a conversation that is happening between the father and the son. Madhav was afraid that if he went into the hut, Ghisu would grab a larger share of the potatoes. He said, "I am scared to go in there." "What's there to be scared of? I am right here." "So, why don't you go and see then?" So, the father says, "What's there to be scared? Just go and check in on her." And the son responds by saying, "Why don't you go and do that then?" The point is, these two men don't want to leave the potatoes and go and check because they are worried that they will get a smaller portion of the food. So, food is at the heart of the problems in this particular story, and that needs to be analyzed in a detailed manner. So, the satisfaction of hunger becomes the primary motive for these two men in terms of their behavior, not only towards Budhia but to the rest of the society. So, appeasing their hunger is primary rather than look after a relative, a wife, a daughter-in-law who is suffering terribly at a really critical point in her life, especially during childbirth, and that situation becomes secondary. So, that tells us something about these two men, that is that their life has been one of prolonged starvation. Prolonged starvation does terrible things to a psyche, and that is manifested through the behavior of Ghisu and Madhav. So, if we look at the narrative closely, one thing becomes clear, and that is that the narrator spends a lot of time thinking about describing food. So, there is a lot of expenditure of time and energy on the idea of food and how it's sourced, and what are the different kinds of food that they get to eat, and what are the incidents that surround the eating of a meal, and especially there is a good and big paragraph on the lavish feast that Ghisu enjoyed in his past. So, this attitude to food has a thematic significance that the readers need to make note of. So, if you take a good look at the beginning of the story when Budhia is suffering, the other thing that is happening is the roasting of the potatoes outside the hut. So, and it's that preoccupation, that occupation of roasting and eating the food that prevents these two men from going in to look after Budhia, who needs help. And again, the idea of food is repeatedly mentioned, and their preoccupation about the hunting for food is described at good length in the narrative. So, this is the portion about the way in which the potato meal is prepared by the two men, and it has a lot of symbolic significance, which is why I am going to read this extract now for you. When it was peeled, when the potato was peeled, the outer part of the potato did not seem that hot, but as soon as it was bitten into, the inner part burned the tongue, the throat and the palate. Instead of holding that burning coal in one's mouth, it seemed wiser to send it down as soon as possible so that it could cool down in the stomach. That's why they were swallowing so quickly, although the effort made their eyes water. It's very painful, That's very clear. Eating of this meal, this potato meal, is hurting these two men, but they don't care. The point is to swallow it as quickly as possible so that the potato can go down into their stomachs and then cool there, and get cooled there. So it's a very, very disturbing idea in terms of the process and the notion of eating. Let's see what they are. So the words burning, burnt, made the eyes water in this particular extract is very, very crucial, because it creates a particular mood, a particular tone. So that it could cool down in the stomach, and the effort made their eyes water. The effort of eating made their eyes water. So it's a searing emotion. That's the word that comes to my mind. It's a searing feeling. Eating becomes a very, very painful, visceral process, as we can see here. And we need to remember that while they're doing this, there's someone who is dying, who is making blood curdling shrieks. So it creates a very animalistic atmosphere as well, that you can be blind to someone's agony and pain while you're eating, and that process of eating itself is becoming painful for the persons who are doing that activity. So there is a lot of symbolism there. So and food is compared to burning coal, and that's a very interesting metaphor. Coal is someone that that burns, that is very, very hot, and food is compared to that, and that burning coal is swallowed by these two men metaphorically. And as I said, this consumption of food is represented in the narrative as a painful and searing sensation, and that can be symbolic of these two figures who are occupying the lowest of the low in terms of the social ladder, and for them sourcing these food and consuming the food can become such a painful activity. And that doesn't mean that they have no culpability in terms of the painful condition that they undergo. Okay, again, so we have the potato meal which is happening while Budhia is dying, and then after that Ghisu thinks back to a feast of the past that he enjoyed, and this is the feast that one of the landlords give to the village people during his daughter's wedding. And there's a lot of narrative effort in describing the different items of food that was given during that feast, and how everybody had a great time, be it the rich or the poor, and they had a lot of food that day, more than they can eat. And this scene becomes a scene of a fantasy for Ghisu, who goes back to that event and relives it for the benefit not only for his psyche but also for his son Madhav. Ghisu thought back to a landlord's wedding feast that he had been to 20 years ago. The contentment he had felt at that feast was worth remembering for a lifetime, and even today the memory was fresh. He said, "I'll never forget that meal. I've never eaten that kind of food or that much of it ever again." The girl's family fed everyone as many puris as they could eat. Everyone, the rich, the poor, everyone ate those puris. So it's a very interesting and significant image to revisit. You revisit a memory because it becomes very special for you. That's when mostly people revisit certain things that happened in the past. And for these two men, and particularly for Ghisu, he revisits this past because that one gave him a satisfaction for a lifetime. He says that that feast was worth remembering for a lifetime, and even today the memory was fresh, and it is fresh because he is continuously starving, as the story suggests. And he said, "I'll never forget that meal." So there is a sort of luxuriating in that particular feast. The memory itself is a luxury for Ghisu, and it's a happy memory that he goes back to time and again. And there is a sense that that feast is symbolic in some way. That feast is symbolic of the character of the landlords who seem to occupy some sort of golden age, a golden age of generosity. So there is this generosity that is manifested through the feast that's given to the entire society, be it you know, the rich or the poor or the middling classes. And that past, that rich past, the past of the feast is contrasted with the present in the mind of Ghisu, because the present is a kind of a barren present in terms of satisfying meals. And the story is very, very clear in giving us that contrast, because the present is about an obsession with food and the bare food, the really Spartan meals that these two men get by with on a daily basis. And that contrast is especially interesting because it has a narrative function to serve in this particular story. And Ghisu says, now everyone's counting pennies. Don't spend on weddings, don't spend on religious festivals. Ask them, where will they stash all the money they take from the poor? There's no problem stashing the money, but when it comes to spending, then they think of thrift. So the present is a present of thrift when people don't spend on all these occasions, special occasions, be it weddings or religious festivals. And Ghisu, for the first time, asks this question, where is the money that they take from the poor? Where have they hidden it? And it's only when they come to spending that money that they think about saving it. So there's hardly any money to be spent on the society for the benefit of the poor. So this extract is crucial because it's one of the extracts that gives us a sense of Gisu's point of view, and he is not a man who doesn't have a good understanding of the functions of society. He does have a very good understanding of the way the society functions, the nature of the landlords, and he also has this conviction that money is extorted from the poor on the part of the rich, the landlords, and instead of returning it to the poor through all these occasions of festivity, personal and religious, they save those money, and that thriftiness on the part of the landlords is what offends the psyche of men like Ghisu. And we can get also a sense that the narrator is also endorsing Gisu's perspective at certain moments in the story, and that is to be recognized because the narrator doesn't offer a one-sided and bleak perspective about Ghisu and Madhav. The narrator has an understanding of why these two characters behave in the fashion that they do. Why are they so callous? Why are they so harsh? And what are the motivations in society? What are the ways in which the society has conditioned them to behave in a particular way? So the narrator is also clear about those aspects, and that clarity is clear in certain moments in the story, and this is one particular moment where it is very clear that the narrator kind of sees the rationale of these two men. And this is the comment: in a society where people who toil day and night are not much better off than these two, and instead of farmers, it's those who exploit them that grow rich, it's no surprise that attitudes like this develop. So the narrator arrives at a conclusion of his or her own in terms of why attitudes such as Gisu's and Madhav's have developed in society, and he points out some of the factors that make Ghisu and Madhav behave in such a harsh manner towards the rest of the people in their world. So, he says that Ghisu and Madhav, they don't join the people who toil day and night, they don't join that community of workers, and in comparison between these two people who toil day and night, these two men, Ghisu and Madhav, are better off. Why? Because at the end of the day, despite all the hard work that these two, that the workers do, they are not better off than Ghisu and Madhav. They seem to be on the same level ground, despite all the hard work that the workers do and commit for the benefit of the rich. So, in hindsight, it appears as if Ghisu is the smarter among the workers. He doesn't commit to the system, and yet he is on the same level playing ground with the rest of the workers. So, the narrator also suggests that Ghisu could have become a conman and even a village headman, because he has that mental capacity for becoming the head of a village or a conman if he had been systematic. Since he is not systematic and since he is not disciplined, Ghisu doesn't achieve those positions of power and influence in society. And the narrator says he didn't have to work as achingly hard as the others, and that people could not take undue advantage of his simplicity and helplessness. So, as I said, Ghisu doesn't work like the rest of the men in his village because at the end of the day, Ghisu will not be wealthy or comfortable. Such hard work will not result in any kind of material advantage, and that is clear when he looks at the rest of the workers, because they are not better off than him. And if he doesn't participate in that village economy, he would also not be exploited by the others. Look at the phrase undue advantage. The village landlords will not take advantage of Ghisu. So, once he is outside of that system, Ghisu is safe from that exploitation. So, we can see some kind of rationale being built up through the narrative and through the thought process of Ghisu, which the narrator offers for our benefit. So, he says that it's Ghisu, since he doesn't participate, he is safer and nobody is exploiting him. So, we do get a sense about the philosophy of Ghisu, about his lifestyle, and we also understand how the village economy works, where most of the workers work really hard, achingly hard. That is a very interesting phrase, achingly hard, painfully hard, and despite such hard work, there is no material improvement in the condition of the workers. So, Ghisu has a good understanding of that, and he stays out of that system. He is on the margins along with his son Madhav, and they are very clear that they are not being exploited by the system because they are not participating in it. So, this is the reason for Gisu's detached attitude towards everyone, and this is also the reason for his self-centered behavior, and not only towards the rest of the society, but also towards his daughter-in-law and perhaps even towards his son. And Madhav, who picks up from his father, is indeed a worthy son because he has learnt really well from his father, and he has improved even upon the father's attitude. So, this is the context for the behavior of Ghisu and Madhav on this particular winter night outside the hut when they are roasting potatoes. So, while the wife is dying, while the wife of Madhav is dying, and to just digress a little bit here, it's important to note that we do not get any flashbacks about Gisu's family, in terms of his wife, in terms of his other sons, whose presence is briefly referenced in the narrative. So, when he fantasizes, it's a fantasy about the food that he ate at a landlord's wedding feast, rather than about his family, which consisted of his wife and the other sons. Madhav is the only remaining son, and it's his his narrative along with his father that occupies the center stage of this particular story world. Now, to come back to this particular scene where they are outside this hut and eating potatoes, this is the actions, the behavior that they do before falling asleep while the wife is dying. They ate the potatoes, drank some water, curled up, covered themselves with their dhotis and fell asleep right there by the embers like two enormous pythons that had eaten their fill. So, they eat and they curl up, cover themselves with their dhotis, with their waistcloth, and they fell asleep like pythons. Pythons is a very interesting symbol. It's an idea that the pythons that the pythons crush their prey to death is kind of foremost in our minds when we read this particular phrase, enormous pythons. So, they seem to almost crush the life out of Budhia by not by exploiting her all along and then leaving her to die. So, this is something that we need to keep in mind in terms of the animal imagery that appears in the story. So, it's almost animalistic behavior, very primitive behavior again. Apart from food, there are no other considerations, and that is highlighted in this particular extract. So, their humanity is erased, they become animal-like, they become python-like in the way they extract the maximum out of their prey, and the prey here is Budhia, and they fall asleep once their hunger pangs are satisfied. So, the Budhia, the female character dies, Budhia dies when they are sleeping at night, and the father and son promptly, when they get up and realize that she is dead, they wail and they cry, and the villagers come to console them as they do perfunctorily, and because that is customary, they console them. And despite all this, their worry is about the money. Their significant need of the hour is the money to buy the shroud, the wood for the funeral activities. So, what they do is they go running to the landlord, who is the source of the money in the village, and it's a very interesting narrative between the landlord and Ghisu, who approaches him for money, and the narrator says that the landlord cannot stand the sight of them. He really dislikes the pair of them, and in fact the narrator says that he has beaten them quite often. Despite all this history, Ghisu is smart enough and shrewd enough to know that if he goes to the landlord at this particular moment, he will get the money. So, he goes there. So, and he offers the narrative that is customary again. That cliched narrative is offered to the landlord on the part of Ghisu, and this is the particular narrative, and we can see the hypocrisy and the strategies that he develops in this particular narrative. The two of us sat by his side half the night. We gave her all the medicines we could, but she abandoned us. And now there is no one to give us a piece of bread, master. We have been destroyed. Our home has been uprooted. I am your slave. There's no one but you. Who will organize her funeral? Who else can I turn to except you? So, this is the perfect cliche to suggest that the wife has abandoned us. In fact, the opposite is the truth. this is a cultural cliche that the dead has abandoned the present. In fact, the dead has abandoned the living, and when the living did not do anything to save the person who was dying. But then we know that this is the necessary narrative which will get the money for Ghisu and Madhav. And the hypocrisy is quite clear here. They say that the two of us sat by her side half the night, which wasn't the case. They sat outside of the hut eating while she was dying, and they say we gave her all the medicines we could, which again was not true. At least that's what the narrative tells us. And it's a combination of falsehood and cultural cliche and the right amount of truth, because he is the slave of the landlord, because the landlord is the only one who can give him the money, and he says there is no one but you who can organize the funeral, and that again is true. It's the landlord who can carry out the necessary activities that can give a funeral to Budhia. So he is the source of funds which can make things happen. And again, the last statement is the truth again. Who else can I turn to? He has to turn to the landlord for support. So the projection of the landlord as the protector, as the father figure, one who can come to the rescue at moments of need, is rightly offered as the correct narrative which will get the money from the landlord. I'll stop here. I'll continue the session in the next time. Thank you.